So the other day I gave a workshop at a school, and then later on I judged their Battle of the Bands competition. And I noticed a few things that cropped up a few times, and I thought this might help you. So the first thing when I was judging the bands is that I heard this a few times, and that was basses that were quite badly out of tune. Now, a lot of them had been playing for the first time, and I don't know, maybe you've got a gig coming up and you're worrying about it. And that's the thing. I think you worry about what you're going to play, and then you don't really think about things like that. So make sure you get one of these. This is a digital tuner. This is the Polytune. It doesn't have to be one of these, the specific brand. That's quite an expensive one. But this clips on like this. And if you're an audience member watching me, you can't really see, you can just see this bit here. So I'm just looking at the back here, and you can just tune. Do that before you go on stage. The other type is this one. I really like this one. This is a Legato, just cheap one, but it sticks out the front. It's got a metronome on it. It's quite good for practice. I'd get one like the Polytune, and it's just a bit more subtle, and you can just make sure you're in tune. It's such a simple thing, but it's something that a professional will do before any recording session, before any rehearsal, any gig. Get in tune. As I mentioned, a lot of these school kids were at different ages, but what I noticed a lot of was sort of incorrect hand position. And this made me think, I think technique is really one of the big things to focus on when you're playing. Bass becomes easier with good technique. So, I don't know, just get like an A natural minor scale, and just be able to play it up and then down, and be in control. Then you can move things around, change the rhythms perhaps, make up some music from it. There I was playing more of the A minor pentatonic. I know I'm sitting down. When you're playing live, you're going to be standing up, but the bass is pointing up a little bit. I'm holding it, my arm here. It's kind of resting here so that it doesn't do this. You can play with a strap when you're practicing, and perhaps you should. I sort of never do. I just hold it. Leg here, body, arm. 3 points, the bass goes nowhere. I'm free to move anywhere I want with my fretting hand, and my plucking hand is in the right position. You can play anywhere really to alter the tone. You just need to get your hands synchronized and coordinated. And that comes from daily practice. Focus on that. I do think this is probably one of the biggest things you can focus on as a beginner. Yeah, really as a beginner, because I think that's the biggest stumbling block to you expressing yourself, is what your hands are doing. So focus on technique and you'll be fine. The next thing I noticed, and this was really obvious, was some basses were far too loud and some basses were far too quiet. Now in this sort of Battle of the Bands situation, it's a bit like some festival gigs you do where there's no sound check, you know. And so they did brilliantly, they did as well as they could, but it just made me think, really value a sound check. Make sure that you're balanced with other instruments. It's going to be very tempting for you to want to put the bass up really, really loud, but you have to think of your audience. Hopefully there's a sound engineer there that can help you out. If you're going through the PA, they can balance things, but just make sure that your actual bass itself is set up well. You know, you understand how to use all the different controls on your bass, and that you're just aware of other instruments and their balance within the whole thing. Now, watching these bass players, it was amazing. There was one who just performed brilliantly. Just a little bit of sort of dancing, nodding the head, relaxing, smiling, and it just sort of, it puts the audience at ease, I think, if they're seeing someone who is relaxed. Now, this is advice for me, because sometimes when I'm playing, I don't know, I could look a bit like John Entwistle, a bit bored. Just remember there's an audience there, and if you're relaxed, they relax as well. I don't think they care too much. You can get away with wrong notes if you're enjoying yourself and performing. Remember, it's like this is the music industry, it's the entertainment business, and you're there to entertain. That was just one thing that struck me. I know that it can be a bit nerve-wracking going on stage, but if you're prepared as much as you can be, you can afford to relax a bit. And just remember to do that. If you relax, if your breathing is is normal. You're not going to tense up. All of that's going to help your performance, and it's going to make the audience enjoy what they're watching a little more. Very important part of playing, especially covers live, is to learn the parts. Now, you'll be limited by your current ability, so it's much better to just do what you can. Even if you can't play an original part, adapt it, do what you can. And that's what I was hearing in this Battle of the Bands. I heard quite a lot of people that couldn't play the original part. I was the only one in the whole audience who cared about that, being a bass player. But as soon as you can, learn original parts. One thing that's, comes to mind right now is the bass line to Lovely Day by Bill Withers. So an iconic bass line, the intro of a song, everyone knows that. This wasn't one of the songs being played, but if you can't play that, you might do something like, just root notes, and you're definitely missing out on the other stuff. I think this comes back to technique. What can your fingers do? How fast can you play? And if there's maybe one thing from this lesson to take, it's just focus on getting these fingers, these hands working together really well. When you do that, you'll be able to play all these parts easily. Now, in the workshop I did earlier in the day, I asked the question, and it was, who here likes music theory? And I saw 3 or 4 heads go like that. And they're very accomplished musicians in the sort of classical world. And I was trained classically, and I hated music theory as well. Didn't really understand it. Why did I need it? I was learning it because I had to pass an exam, and it just didn't work for me. But then it changed my life when I started to actually understand it and see what it can do for me. So here's one thing I really want to urge you to do. It's to take music theory seriously. I've got a playlist on this channel, and if you go through some of those, you'll understand how music can work for you. Just to give you an example, so let's say I'm doing a blues in A. This sort of thing. So what I'm doing here, I know that the first chord is A7. I know that that's this. An A7 is an A dominant 7th, okay? So I know that when I see that chord symbol, I have this sound to work with, and I've got that arpeggio. It comes from a Mixolydian mode. I'm not teaching this, so don't worry if this all freaks you out. I'm just saying that I know what's open to me, so I can play around with that, and with a little bit of studying that style of music, blues in this case, I figure out some great bass lines, and I basically copy them. It's a major pentatonic. That's a major 6th. Right next to that is that flat 7, okay? You've probably heard that sort of thing before. And since in a 12-bar blues, in this example, all the different chords are the same quality, meaning that dominant 7th, I can do that on every chord. Okay, so that's an example, and there are millions, but I'm just going to leave it at that one example. That's one example of how you can take a dry, cold music theory idea, in this case, dominant 7th / Mixolydian, and use it in music. Music theory changed my life. It can change yours too. One last thing I noticed in the workshop, and this was something that I don't think it shocked me. When I was teaching in schools for 18 years, it started to get to a point where people didn't know Guns N' Roses. One kid didn't know the Beatles. I suppose these things happen, okay? But it's to know the greats. I actually asked when did they think the bass was invented, and they said 1980. Okay, so they got that wrong a bit. So the first mass-produced bass was the Fender Precision, 1951, Leo Fender. The rest is kind of history, but from that point, you had James Jamerson. Then you went through many other great bass players of that era. Carol Kay, David Hood, Jerry Jamott, Tommy Cogbill. Then you move into funk, you move to the James Brown bass players. And why I think it's important to know this is if you can know your lineage of the greats and you can study them, you actually see how bass playing evolves, and you see how even players right now, incredible bass players like, say, Thundercat, you can see where they came from. And he's made a completely new style that's all his own. But you can just borrow so many ideas from these people if you know who they are. And then if you know who they are, you can then listen to them and immerse yourself in that music. It's just going to help you get better as a musician. And I can't advocate that enough. Learn the greats, learn some of the history, and then learn as much as you can about their playing. Okay, that last one wasn't really much about performance or gigging, but it kind of is in that this is a craft. The better you get at this, the easier playing on stage is going to be. And the more different bands you can play in, perhaps one day you could do this for a living, maybe make a bit of money at the weekend doing this. You've just got to take it seriously. You've got to get good in all these different areas. So I hope that helped you a little bit. Here's a link to a course that will make you a better bass player. Any questions, let me know. See you next time.